Hey guys, welcome to Photography Insights, the one-stop show that goes behind the scenes with people in the photography industry. And this week I'm back with another lovely guest for you. I can't tell you how excited I was to finally speak to someone who shoots architecture. As you know, you've seen me doing a little bit of this recently. When Joel agreed to come on, I just couldn't believe it. He's another master of the art. He really is into his long exposure black and white photography, and he does shoot on both mediums of full frame digital and occasionally uses a large format. So you'll get to hear him talk about both these things. So he is a commercial photographer in the sense he works on assignments, but he does some project work as well for himself. And I think what you'll see is he's much more than a photographer. He's a mentor, he's a teacher. He's actually got his own range of high-tech filters. He's done lots of videos and behind the scenes how to work things with things like Photoshop and masking. He's got his own things he does that are totally unique and not found on the internet. And you'll hear him talk about why this is important to him. Now, Joel comes from a very different background to most, because he's had a career in IT but was a qualified criminal lawyer. So you'll hear how intelligent this guy is and how important things like art are and how much he loves reading. So in this one, we have the importance of studying painters and art, passion and defining art, learning about yourself, objects versus subjects, understanding Picasso, reading books, ideas, workflow and research, why black and white, teaching content not seen on the internet, tilt shift versus large format, 16 stop ND filters, and shooting phase 1 with 100 megapixels. Now, it was very clear when I was speaking with Joel that he has a fantastic sense of humour, so of course I decided to put him through my random questions. So find out why the Dutch like licorice, and why Joel would enjoy running 200 metres. We have provided links to one of the books he discusses in the podcast in the show notes, so please do check that out. And obviously there are links to his website with all his content, so please do check that out. There are many things there, and obviously there is some free content. He does his newsletters and he's really into his blogging as well. And there is a link to his Instagram too. Before I move you on, I always like to say a big thank you to the friends of the show, which is Pete at Static Age. So for anyone looking at some very well priced signs and books, please do check him out. It's got work from people around the world and some very lovely work. For anyone still wanting development, then please do check out Film Dev. They provide a wonderful service at very good rates. So I suppose we better move you on to the show. It's a little bit longer than normal, so please do bear with us, but Joel's a very interesting guy, so I hope you do enjoy this one. I am trying to concentrate as much as bringing this weekly, but as I keep saying, work is very busy at the minute, and by the end of the day I'm very tired mentally and drained. So please do bear with me. I am still in contact with people, but there's obviously a lot of things going on at the minute, so there might be some delays for one or two guests while I'm out searching for more, because I don't just want to keep using other people's recommends. I do like this to be about my interests and trying to bring you someone different and important. And it's something I'm really keen on, and obviously I talked about that in last week's show, so I will do my best, but but architecture is something that's currently on my mind, as I said. So I hope you keep watching my feed. Hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, when I get paid, I'll be able to send them off and get them developed. And let's have my fingers crossed. Well, anyway, for now, let's move you over to Joel. So please do enjoy this one. Thanks, guys. And welcome to the show, Joel. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Andrew. Very nice to be here in the show. I'm feeling very honored to be in the show.
Oh, me too.
The first time I'm doing a podcast, by the way. After having declined a B&H photography podcast many years ago.
I don't know how you can say thank you so much then. I mean, that's amazing. You turned down B&H just to be on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, thanks so much. It's been lovely corresponding with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's been really exciting for me because, as you've seen, my absolute passion at the minute is architecture. And I came across your work and was like, oh my God, this is amazing stuff. And it's not just about finding great photographers, because there's more to you than that. Obviously, you spend a couple of minutes on your website and you can see the amount of services you offer means you have to be at the top of your game. Am I somewhere close?
Well, I hope to be on top of my game, because the thing is, yes, I'm not only one who hopefully creates beautiful photographs, but I also spend a lot of time digging into the how and why behind photography, but especially the how and why behind fine art. And what is fine art? What is art? What is photography? Those are basic questions that I ask myself all the time. And since I'm pretending to be a sort of fine art photographer, you really have to know what that is, art, and what it is for you specifically. I'm not pretending to have the definitive answer to what art is. Absolutely not. But I have some ideas myself about what it is. So I'm trying to express that in my photographs. On top of that, I also do I write a lot of stuff on my blog, a lot of articles that I think go a little bit deeper than let's say the average article on a specific kind of subject. I hope you've seen that too. And I think that reflects the kind of personality that I am. I'm always taking things very seriously.
Yeah.
And I'm always very passionate about everything that I love doing. And I love doing photography. I love art. Hopefully that's something that you see in my articles, but also, more importantly, in my work, of course.
Oh, without a doubt, it's just absolutely outstanding. And when you're looking at it, there's lots of photographers that are capable of good imagery, without a doubt. But it's like you're saying, it's the fine art side. I mean, for instance, probably 4 or 5 months ago, I've heard of the term, but if you actually asked me to explain it, I wouldn't have been able to explain it at all. So, what is fine art? I'm wondering if I've got it correct, that it's just something you do for yourself.
Well, the thing is, I believe that in photography we talk about fine art, right? Fine art photography, but basically it's the same as art, right? I mean, art in general, whether you talk about paintings, about beautiful literature, about sculpture, it can be art, it can be more craftsmanship, right? The same for photography, but we tend to call it fine art. What is that? Well, I believe that, and I think I've written a few articles about that art is for me a way of understanding life experiences much better for yourself. It gives it for me, when I try to create art, I'm trying to create something uh, that I've experienced, and I'm trying to communicate and express that you might not have experienced yourself before, and that it may add or might add to your own experience in life. Experience is a very broad word, right? I mean, it can
Yeah.
cover so many kind of things. So I'm not only talking about emotional experiences, it can also be, let's say, more psychological experiences, but
Mm.
it's about experience in the broadest sense of the word. If you, for me, that is the essence of art. For an artist, that is,
Mm.
to communicate that experience through imagery, through paintings, through photography, and hopefully you will find an observer who can see what you're trying to communicate, and hopefully they find in that an experience, and that is very important to me, that they haven't experienced before, that adds to your own understanding of life.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
you see a photo and you think, that's just, okay, I don't experience anything with that.
yeah.
Maybe because you didn't understand it, or maybe because it's a cliche. So basically, if you experience something that you've experienced before, it's a cliche, right? So I'm
Yeah.
trying to communicate something that you haven't experienced before that is not a cliche. That is at least something that I'm trying to do. So basically, and it's also about, I mean, some artists say that they're trying to communicate emotions, but I think it's too narrow a word that can cover it all. For me, it's all about experience. And emotion can be a very important experience, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, look at, for example, Jackson Pollock, the famous American abstract expressionist painter, or Mark Rothko, the other American painter. They emphasized the role of emotion in their paintings. They wanted their viewers to look at their paintings and then almost break down and cry. That's what Mark Rothko literally said, by the way. Okay, I
Right.
wouldn't go as far as that. But yes, I think emotion plays a very important role. But I like to call it an experience. I think that covers more than just an emotion. I hope I'm making myself clear with what I'm trying to say, what art
Yeah.
is. For me, it's all about understanding your life better
Yeah.
through experiences, to, I mean, to know what it is, to be, well, I mean, sadness, for example, is an emotion. But what exactly is it? There are so many variations on that, and that is something that you can hopefully add to the experience of a viewer, because there's more than just this specific, let's say, this specific type of sadness or happiness. I mean,
Mm.
there's so much in there, right? I mean, and now I'm only talking about very obvious kind of emotion, but there's so much more,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm trying to, what an artist should try to do, I think. And they do it also, and I think that's a very important aspect of art. Try to convey that in an aesthetic way through beauty, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So,
That's good.
so I've written a lot about that. I'm not saying that this is the final answer to what art is, of course not. But for me, it makes a lot of sense to approach it like that.
No, no, I agree. That's um, that's a good way of thinking about it, really. Because I've always struggled with this. Because I think the problem now, when you learn photography, maybe you haven't had the classic training, that the first things you learn as a photographer are things like working a camera
Yeah.
and composure and all this sort of things. And I'm 4 years in now, and because of podcasting, I've thought a bit more about the art side and how I should be happy with my own work and producing something that's meaningful, and that other people can understand it. and that is so far removed from when I've initially started.
Hmm.
It's
What do you mean, if I may ask a question, Andrew?
yeah.
I mean,
So because like
yeah.
when you first started, and even recently, like I say, portraiture. You're just taking pictures of pretty people, because
Hmm.
for what reason? Practicing. Yeah, they might be practicing their pose. I might be practicing my skills as a photographer. I might be learning how to work lighting. But
Hmm.
that is not art, and it's not what you're doing.
Hmm.
So getting to the point from where I am to getting to where you are, do you
Yeah.
think that's a big curve, or do you think it's just finding the right person?
You know, it's a good question. I'm not sure if it's a big curve.
Hmm.
I think it should be in the nature of the person, the artist, to,
Mm-hmm.
well, to experience it as a big curve or just a natural curve, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. It's
Yeah.
you know, uh, I don't think I have a definitive answer to that. I think that you can learn a lot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you start out as a photographer, you start out in a very technical way. You try to get used to the camera, to all the technical settings.
Hmm.
It should become second nature. Of course, you always start like that, So
Yeah.
that's far away removed from the actual art that you might or might not want to create at some point in the future,
Hmm.
right? And and then the second phase is there when you see some beautiful photographs and that you want to make as well. So you start emulating that, which is also a very good way of, let's say, getting to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But then at some point you need to leave that,
Yeah.
and then you have to start creating for yourself to be true to what you want to say, not so much what other people have said. Right there, we get back to the cliche kind of thing. It's
Hmm.
but uh, it's normal to be focused more on the technical side of photography at the beginning, and then at some point you start emulating people because that's the fastest way of learning specific techniques, specific style.
Yeah.
But then again, you have to move away from that at some point, and so you said you, you were taking some portraits, right? And
Uh-huh.
you started to try to come up with some nice pretty pictures, right?
Yeah.
So now you hope that you're going to arrive at a point that you make some fine art portraiture. So
Yeah.
what is that in your view? Now I'm asking the question. I don't know why I did that, but sorry about that.
Oh, you're
But
welcome. Don't
it,
worry.
it, it's in my nature to be the teacher in most cases. And now find it hard to completely set it aside, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, me and Joel was talking earlier, and it was more being listening, wasn't it? And you were saying how natural it is for you just to talk because you're a teacher.
Hmm. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we talked about that, yes. And I also told Andrew that I'm not sure if I'm a good teacher, but at least I try to share something that hopefully you haven't heard before. And most of the times I succeed in doing that, but still you haven't answered my question, Andrew.
There you go. I'm deflecting you. Yeah, well, I think it's sort of finally happened, and for me, it's come in the most um, unplanned way. Recently, I got back into the darkroom because of the virus and lockdown,
Hmm.
and I started experimenting by doing things like prefixing my prints and playing like that.
Hmm.
And I had this particular image I'd shot last year, color negative, and I've been printing them on black and white. And I prefixed over her eyes crosses, and then I did a crossover ellipse because I wanted it to be like the opposite of a beauty shot. Um, and after I'd done it, I was so impressed with the look and how it came out that I'm going to turn it into a project.
You mean you're talking about darker printing of your portraits, right? That's what
Yeah,
you, okay.
yeah.
But apart from the process, Again, I'm asking questions here, but I think it's a very important topic, you know.
It is, yeah.
So, apart from the process, what makes it a fine art portrait for you? What is it?
I think it's because it's just me doing something I want to do and expressing the way I want beauty to be seen, that it's not perfect,
Hmm.
something like that sort of thing.
Okay. Is it also in the way that the portrait looks like? Is there a specific kind of aesthetic for you in it that makes you label it as fine art?
No, I think it's because I struggle with the label and understanding, exactly what fine art is. Some things I can look at, like your work, it seems really clear that it's fine art. But things like portraiture, I think I struggle. That there's some artists that quite clearly are fine art, um,
Hmm.
but then I think that's me. I just don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
from
can
there.
I can ask very difficult questions. Okay, so let me rephrase that question. Is it about the sitter in your portrait, or is it about something that you want to communicate about the sitter or about yourself that makes it fine art portraiture?
Probably both.
Both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm not going to ask questions anymore because you you go ahead, Andrew. So I'm going to shut up for now. Okay.
No, that's completely fine. Don't be daft. Yeah, I think it was a good experiment because it taught me a little bit more about the darkroom as well. You see,
Mm-hmm.
so I've been trying to find resources where I can learn a little bit more theory, because then I can play with things and create the look and feel I want rather than um, science of this tray, this tray, this tray. There's your print. I didn't want that. I wanted to mix the entire thing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what I've been doing is playing with my daughters with lumen prints, and then we just got a load of different foods and different things we found in the house. We were
Yeah.
just spraying everything on, uh, and that was a lot of fun. That's not fine art, but it's taught me a little bit that we don't just have to use a camera, a piece of paper, um, and that there are other things that I can bring into maybe my work and portraiture and architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm.
So I think this is part of what you're saying. You're helping teach people their understanding things, and it's not always um, this is what f-stop you need. Um, there's theory and understanding and art and culture. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
things, isn't there?
If I may ask you a question again.
Sure.
So you said something about my photographs, right? That you
Mm.
find it that it was obvious to you that it is fine art.
Yeah.
But why is it obvious then?
I
Is it the
don't
look?
know.
Is it the
Yeah,
feel?
yeah. It must be the look. Yeah.
But if it's only the look, then I mean, a look can easily be copied, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So if it's only the look, then maybe it's not fine art.
Mm.
Maybe it should go deeper, right? That
Yeah.
I would say that the look doesn't define if it's fine art or not,
Okay. Yeah.
especially if it's a look that has become ubiquitous, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you take a look at my photographs, uh, there are so many other architecture photographers right now who do the same kind of work.
Hmm.
So you see that it's really not that hard to copy that look, even though some might argue that if you look at it in real life on a large print, you see the difference between my work and, let's say, another architecture photographer's work, because
Yeah.
then you see the difference in tonality in the darker parts, for example, but still, it can be copied. But so that doesn't define art for me, that you can that it has specific look. it should also convey something else, something more, specific kind of experience. And I hope you would say that, yes, I've experienced something new with your photographs, Joel, but you'd
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at them again now. I don't know. It's like some of it's like a feeling of serenity.
hmm
Um, I think it's hard for me to describe because,
It's hard, right?
yeah, because I've never had to do that before. You see.
Well, I didn't expect a very clear answer, it's just to make you think, because the thing
Yeah.
is, these days, everyone calls his or her work art or fine art,
Yeah.
but I've always asked myself, but why? Is it because of that specific style, or is it because of something else?
Hmm.
The intention, I think, should be there to create something that can evoke some kind of emotion and experience, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's what the artist should do. And if you try doing that, then I think you might consider yourself uh, an artist. I'm not saying that there should be some sort of a board who decides what is art or not. You decide it. You decide it for yourself, but decide it for yourself based on the right kind of arguments for the right reason, not just because you create a specific style,
Yeah.
but because you want to say something. And it can be done more effectively saying something uh, about the world, about yourself, about your life,
Hmm.
if you do this in a very effective way. What is an effective way? Effective way is to come up with something that's aesthetic, that's beautiful,
Yeah.
right? So for me, that is the uh, way, aesthetics, to reach a specific audience. But hopefully, they can see right through that aesthetic and see what I'm actually trying to say. Because for me, that's more important. If they cannot see that, then I think maybe I've failed as an artist. Then.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Or is it because some people can't see your vision or don't understand it? But then that's not a failure on your part. Because, like you're saying, some things are going to be feelings out there.
Mhm.
So if maybe someone's never experienced that feeling before,
Then it becomes hard. Yeah, absolutely. I
yeah,
mean, I mean, we all know that Picasso was an outstanding painter, one of the most brilliant artists of the previous century.
yeah,
But not everyone will understand his work,
yeah,
right? I mean, it doesn't mean that Picasso has failed,
no,
and it doesn't mean that the observer has failed as well. No, it just means that you haven't had that. It's hard for you to connect to that kind of experience that he's trying to convey. You know.
yeah. I think for me it's tough because I come from more of um, not from a world of art. I worked in finance for 20 years. It was factual, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
And then moving into IT's probably helped a little bit. Problem solving skills come in better.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've come from a different background as well, haven't you, Joel?
Yeah, I'm actually trained as a criminal lawyer. Okay, so that was many years ago. But when I came from university, I went straight into IT because that was upcoming back in those days, so early 90s, right? I mean, the internet was just coming up. Desktop computers were just coming up. So
Mm,
it was a very exciting time. And since I have an academic background, a lot of people, a lot of those big IT companies were looking for people who were just smart, if I can say that of myself,
yeah,
an academic kind of way of thinking.
yeah,
Okay, so I got a job and I worked more than 20 years in the IT, varying from software designer to project manager and quality manager, etc.
mm,
And I quit that daytime job 6 years ago in 2014 because I wanted to go full time into photography. But in a nutshell, that's my background. Criminal lawyer, trained as a criminal lawyer, into IT, and now full time professional photographer. But actually, my dream was to become an architect. I always wanted to be an architect, but
Okay.
I never got to that part because over here, back in those days, you need to be good at physics, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
At math.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at that. I think I'm. No, I wasn't very good at that. So I had no chance of being admitted to university to study architecture. These days it's different because
Mm.
now there's also more artistic side to architecture at over here in Holland at the universities. So now I might have made a chance, but that's what I actually wanted to do, and perhaps that's also the reason that you see a lot of architecture in my photographs.
Yeah.
That explains it a little bit already, right?
Yeah, it does in a way. Yeah. I
So
suppose
you,
it does.
so you could say that I always had this creative mindset,
Yeah.
and back in those days, so when I was a teenager and when I decided that I wanted to be an architect but couldn't, I also thought of doing something in the world of movies, of filmmaking.
Okay.
So I once applied for a job at the Dutch TV studios, to be a camera operator. That
Oh
was
yeah.
way back in those days. Because the thing is, I thought at least that's something artistic. Maybe I can express myself better through that. But I didn't do that. So I ended up studying law at law school. And maybe for the better, because it made me a little bit smarter. Well, it taught me a specific way of thinking. That
Mm.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think I've learned from that as well. But I don't regret having done all those kind of things that I never did anything with. By the way,
Mm.
it all added to my personal life experience.
Yeah, which is a big thing. And then one thing I wanted to ask you then. So you've always wanted to be an architect. You shoot a lot of architecture. Do you follow architecture for a reason to shoot it? Is it are there certain architects that you follow and think I'm always going to go shoot their buildings, or is it
Oh
about
yeah.
a building?
First of all, yes, there are many architects that are like to follow in terms of
Okay.
following their buildings. For example, if you look at Zaha Hadid, the famous architect, female architect who died already 3 years ago now, I think. I love her buildings. Fantastic architect, and there's something about the grace, the beauty, the flowing lines in her work that I love as a photographer, But also people like Frank Gehry, it's another great architect. So those are a few of those examples that I like to follow,
Yeah.
And apart from that, I also have a weak spot for Art Deco architecture, especially
Ah.
the vertical, let's say the vertical kind of Art Deco in New York, in cities like New York, because you
Yeah.
also have the more horizontal kind of Art Deco that is very typical for, let's say, the architecture of Los Angeles, which is a horizontal kind of Art Deco.
Okay.
But I prefer the more vertical kind of Art Deco, as you can see here. Well, the the listeners, of course, cannot see that. Okay, so let's not go into that. Okay, all right. But yes, so that's because of my love for architecture. But
Yeah.
basically, if you look at my photographs, the fact that I chose architecture to be the main subject matter, or actually, I in my teaching I always like to say it's the object matter, because architecture, anything that you have in your photograph, that's basically object matter. Because in fine art, you have to make that separation between object matter and subject matter. Subject matter, a lot of people refer to that thing in your frame as a subject matter.
Okay.
While it isn't true, it's actually the object matter, because the real subject matter in fine art is what you try to convey. That's something else. And this is something that I had from an interview with Barnett Newman, the famous British painter, or was it American? I think it's a British painter.
Okay.
He was an abstract painter. I once heard an interview with him where he said that, okay, there's a difference between object matter and subject matter, because his paintings were abstract. There was nothing in it. It's just a zip, right? Just
Right, okay.
a line in the middle. So the interviewer at some point asked him, okay, but there's nothing in there. There's no subject matter. And he said something like, no, it's not true. There's no object in there, but there's an intention behind the painting. And that's the real subject matter. Okay, so here, this is something that I like to teach in my teachings, that when I talk about something in my photo, it's always the object matter. Okay,
Yeah.
if you're a news or documentary photographer, then fine, then the object matter is equal to the subject matter. Because, for example, a car that crashed into a tree, that's something that you want to communicate, and that's purely that. You see the car crashing into the tree, and what you want to communicate is exactly that fact, right?
Course,
nothing else, but in my case, in fine art, in the case of fine art, I shoot that building, not because of that building, but because I want to convey something with it. So that's the object matter of my building, and what I want to convey is the subject matter. It's basically the same as the equivalences from Alfred Stieglitz, let's say the spiritual father of fine art photography. You have heard of him, Andrew?
No. I'm still very new.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a short teaching, okay? A lecture. So Alfred Stieglitz he's considered to be the spiritual father of fine art photography, right?
Okay.
So at some point he came up with a series of photographs of clouds. So just clouds.
Yeah.
And when people ask him, okay, what is this? Is this a series about clouds? No, he said, this is a series about specific emotions that I want to convey. The clouds are there just for a symbolic reason.
Right.
It's not about clouds.
Yeah.
It's about the emotions that I want to convey, and he called that equivalence. Okay, equivalence. Okay. So that's the theory by Alfred Stieglitz, and what I'm saying here is relates very much to that, but I'm saying it in a different way, maybe in a more technical way. I'm saying, okay, the thing in my photograph is the object matter. That building's an object matter. What I try to convey is a subject matter. That's the real subject matter, and that's something else. So basically, the buildings in my photographs are just objects that happen to be the right kind of objects for me to convey something that I want to say.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Right, and perhaps I'm saying one of the reasons that I'm choosing architecture to be that kind of object matter that I like to convey some ideas with is because I always was a big fan of architecture, that I always wanted to be an architect. Maybe if I wanted to be a car manufacturer, for example, I would have used cars. I'm not sure if that is a good example, but I think the object doesn't really matter. But you need to have some sort of connection with it. You need to feel comfortable with it. You need to be able to relate to it. And I could relate to architecture because I always wanted to be an architect.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you another question then. So if the object is only there for you purely conveying your thoughts and meaning,
it's a symbolic thing in your photograph that you feel connected to, that you feel related to, that makes you feel at ease with what you want to say. It's purely symbolic in my case. That, and of course, there's also something to be said about the aesthetics of a building, because, like I said, if you can effectively communicate what you want to say an experience, an emotion, whatever,
Mm.
If you can do that through the vessel of aesthetics. I mean, if you look at something beautiful, you feel drawn to it. Okay, you want to spend a little bit more time with it,
Yeah.
right? And maybe then just enough time to make you think and to make you feel something with it.
Mm.
So that's for me the importance of aesthetics in art.
No, that's good. So do you plan a feeling and then go out and shoot, or do you plan both elements together? How does it really work for
Well,
you?
that's a very good question. The thing is, most of the things are, I think, subconscious.
Okay.
And well, there's a specific feeling that I always wanted to convey. Uh, I don't think I'm going to go into that, but
Sure, yeah.
what you perhaps might have seen in my work is that there's a specific relationship between dark and light, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Objects seem to emerge out of the darkness. Well, that's a very important, let's say, theme in my overall work,
Mm-hmm.
light coming out of darkness,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, emerging out of the dark. Okay, I'm not going to go into much detail uh, on that, but the thing is, so I'm always looking for that kind of objects, that I can visualize in that kind of way. It has
Yeah.
to do with that, but not always about that, But
Yeah.
most of the times, yeah, and you can see it in my work, right? It's all
Yes.
about. It's also all about emphasizing shapes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know that a strong shape is very important in any kind of visual, well, in any kind of image, right? Whether it's painting or
Mm-hmm.
photography, always think about that. Always try to come up with a strong shape, So, and architecture, of course, because they're very geometrical kind of objects,
Yeah.
have the tendency to be already very powerful in shape. So that is very important. Shapes,
Yeah.
It
I
it, it is
suppose.
something. It is something that is subconsciously hidden in our let's say in our being to be on the lookout for strong shapes.
Yeah.
It, it's something that I didn't make up myself, by the way. I've read it in a book by Margaret Livingston. She wrote, okay, I forgot the name of the book, uh, Vision and the Biology of Seeing.
Okay.
I think it's called. Okay, it's a
Mm.
very interesting book. She talks about that, and well, you just have to read it yourself. I think it's Margaret Livingston, by Vision, uh,
Okay.
Biology and the Art of Seeing, something like that. I've got the exact title, but
Yeah.
I think I'm really close to
Yeah.
what it is. So she said that shapes are, we are always, for some reason, always instinctively on the lookout for specific kind of patterns and shapes.
No, that's interesting. So do these come from your visits, or is it research sometimes?
Well, the thing is, I read a lot. I read a lot of
Okay.
books,
Yeah.
and especially books related to art, to the biology of seeing as well. I like reading books also about neuroscience, and
Hmm.
why, for example, that we consider specific things beautiful and why not.
Yeah.
Uh, so I like to read a lot, and especially about art. So it all comes naturally. So it's not that I'm doing very specific research on a specific topic. It's just that I'm reading something and I think, wow, that's interesting. Maybe that's something that I can use for my photographs, for my articles, for my teaching, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So thinking this through like in a workflow. So you've come up with an idea, you've come up with a perfect object, whether it's a building or a car or whatever, Is the next step for you to go check out the location and do some research about time and day and light?
Okay. So first of all, uh, I don't. Well, I do check the locations,
Okay.
obviously, and these days it's very easy to do that. You have Google Maps. So
Yeah.
basically, if I plan a trip to, let's say, New York, I've been there many times, but let's say that would be the
Yeah.
first time that I would be there.
Hmm.
And okay, there are so many buildings over there, right? So
Yeah.
pick out one, let's say the Chrysler Building, New York.
Yeah.
So if I were to do that now, I would go to Google Maps, type in Chrysler Building, and I would go through the streets via the you know that, right? You
Yes.
can just follow the entire route. You can see all the
Yes.
buildings, so you know exactly where to stand. So I do that kind of preparations. Yeah, absolutely. I don't care about the time of day. I don't care about the weather. I don't care about that at all.
Okay.
If you ask me, Joel, do you go out specific time of the day in the early morning? I hate that. I like to sleep in a little bit. If I can, I have a very late brunch, and I would go out shooting when it's not raining, but
Yeah.
at least a little bit overcast. Okay, so I don't like direct sunlight, because if you have direct sunlight,
Mm.
your the object that you want to shoot is going to cause a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you have to keep in mind. I like to have the soft light.
Yeah.
So preferably with an overcast sky. That's what I like.
Yeah.
And I'm a lazy man, so I like to go out shooting in the afternoon. So, but apart from location scouting, I don't do anything else.
Okay. Because I know other people that they literally plan it to, the exact thing entirely.
Yeah.
But then to me, that's photography, not art. What is what you're doing? So it is a very different thing. It's a different meaning. The whole thing. It's that to me is more purposeful photography.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
And there's nothing wrong about that.
no, God
If
no.
that makes you feel good, if that makes you feel comfortable, then by all means do that.
Yeah,
But for me, it's quite simple. I
yeah,
just check the location. So if I already know the location, then I just look at the weather. Is it rainy? Is it overcast? Is it sunny? You know, I make the decision on the spot. I'm not going to prepare weeks in advance. The only thing I'm preparing weeks in advance is the trip itself. Of course, you have to
yeah.
buy your plane ticket, that kind of stuff. But
Mm,
that's it. And then I'll see when I get there what I can do with it. So I tend to explore let's say the environment first. Okay, where can I stand? Is there too much traffic? Can I stand there? Are the sidewalks crowded or not? And so I try to explore the environment a little bit, but I always do that on the spot, on location.
yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, the only other part of this that seems really different for me is the lack of color. So why would you say you're predominant black and white?
Okay, so there are many reasons that I would go with black and white. And
Hmm.
this is something that I always teach during my workshops. So first of all, I like to move away from reality as many steps as possible,
Ah,
because
okay.
that is an aspect that is very important in my work.
Yeah,
Because the thing is, uh, and neuroscientists have found this out, that if you distort reality, it's being considered to be more aesthetic.
yeah,
Okay, so that's a very important premise in my work. So I'm always finding ways to move away from reality as many steps as possible. So I do that. So first of all, if you grab your camera, you're already moving away from reality, right? I mean,
yeah,
because you have the scaled down reality within a specific frame.
yeah,
It's two-dimensional, while real life is 3 or 4 dimensions, right?
yeah,
But still, you're already moving away from reality. If you add to that, for example, long exposure photography, you add another step away from reality. If you add to that black and white, that's even more steps away from reality. And if you do what I do with my photographs in black and white, and let's say add three-dimensional depth to buildings that isn't there in real life,
Yeah.
move away another step from reality. So that's one aesthetic, let's say, uh, reason, okay, to be doing this in black and white. It has to do with aesthetics. On top of that, and this is something that not many people know, that we can only perceive depth in the monochromatic part of our brain. So whatever you see and experience as depth in real life is because it has been processed in the monochromatic colorblind part of your brain. So meaning, if you work in black and white, it's easier to see contrast. It's easier to create depth. So I also do color photography. So what I do is, if I intend to come up with a color photograph, I first work in black and white, adjust the contrast, because you can only see the contrast correctly and accurately if you do that in black and white, because color really covers that up. It distorts the actual luminance values. So black and white photography is all about luminance values, the difference between light and dark, the contrast. So working in black and white gives you a much more accurate perception of depth. So it's also going to be easier to create depth in black and white.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, again, the ability to see depth takes place in the colorblind part of your brain, nothing else. Of course, perspective lines help increasing that sense of depth as well. Then we talk about specific compositional elements, right?
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. I like the thinking there.
I didn't make that up. Okay, it's all in the it's all in the in literature. Okay, so that part is in the book, also by Margaret Livingston, Biology and the Art of Seeing. Okay, or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's really a book that I would highly recommend, by the way.
No,
if you are interested in improving your photography.
God, yeah. Always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really interesting. But your idea of moving away from reality is really interesting. I like that.
So those are the most important reasons that I would go with black and white.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Because no one's ever said anything like that. So, yeah,
that's why I always say that I'm always trying to teach something, to write about something that you don't find easily on the internet, because then there's no purpose in me teaching anything anymore, if you can find it so easily on the internet. And okay, that's one of my motivations, one of my goals, to come up with a different point of view on photography, on art. And I don't always succeed, but at least I'm trying to.
Well, you must be, because obviously teaching is obviously another big thing you're doing, whether it's workshops, online courses, and you've talked about this mentorship you've done, and you've been doing that quite a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, so basically I've been doing teaching in photography for the last 9 years. So it's since 2011. That was my first workshop, because a lot of people were asking me, Joel, why don't you give or teach a workshop? Because you have so many beautiful photographs. So I started doing that in 2011, and then it stuck with me, and I really enjoy doing that. And it also gives me a good excuse to go traveling, because if I say, okay, I'm going to do a workshop in New York City or Melbourne or whatever, and I can make money with it, I mean, that's great, it's a good excuse for traveling. But it's not only that, of course, I like to be in contact with people. I'm quite introvert, but at the same time, I like to be surrounded by people. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's true, So I prefer to be alone, actually.
Okay.
but I prefer to be alone in a crowded city. Does it
Yeah.
sound strange?
No, no, no. I love it. Yeah, I'm the same.
It gives me I don't know what it is. I like to walk in a city like New York or London. I mean, London, right?
Yeah,
It's quite crowded.
yeah,
I like doing that. I like observing people. I like
mm,
being there in the hectic environment. I love that.
yeah.
But I prefer to be alone for some reason. It's strange. But anyway, I'm digressing now. So what was your question again, Andrew? Sorry about that.
That's all right. I don't even remember it now either. Yeah, it's gone.
It's for me too.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, that's fine. Um, yeah. Oh, so we were talking about teaching.
Yeah, oh, teaching. Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Obviously, you
yeah,
get a big
yeah,
buzz out of this, and um, you've talked about the love you see in your students' works.
yeah.
Um,
It it really motivates me. It really inspires me. To see some of my students come up with something that is really unique and original.
yeah.
Because what I teach them is okay. If you are at the beginning, always tell them, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that. Okay,
Hmm.
try to emulate this kind of work because that's the easiest way of learning something, right?
Yeah. Of course it is.
But then after some point, when you got all that down, you know how to do it technically and know how to execute something.
Mm,
Then I'm always pressing them to do something that's unique, that's entirely that comes entirely from themselves. So to not emulate other people anymore.
yeah.
And and especially when they win some first prize awards in international competitions, then I'm really, really, really proud. And I can
Wow.
tell you that I have quite a few students who have won first prizes at the International Photography Awards, at the Sony World Photography Awards, etc. You know,
Wow.
so they've all done that, and that means hopefully that I teach them something that's hopefully valuable to them in their development. I'm not
That's
saying
amazing.
I'm not saying I'm a good teacher,
Yeah.
because perhaps I'm a lousy teacher, but I but I have a lot of experience. I think I have a lot of knowledge on this specific kind of subject matter,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to share that in a very enthusiastic and passionate way, and hopefully that compensates for me being a mediocre kind of teacher.
I don't think mediocre teachers would get a first prize student somehow. No. No, I think you're much more than that.
Okay.
So, where does the technology fit into this? Because obviously, you still shoot film as well, large format. So
Yeah.
where does this fit in?
Okay. So the thing is with large format, I mean, I love architecture, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to shoot architecture in a technically correct way, you actually need a tilt shift lens,
Yeah.
right? So I have my DSLR, I have a tilt shift lens, but there are some limitations with it. I mean, for example, if you have the Canon camera and you have the Canon tilt shift lens, let's say the 24 mil,
Hmm.
okay, you can only shift it up, right? You can shift it up for, let's say, 12 millimeters, but you
Hmm.
cannot shift it to the left, to the right anymore. Then it's just
Yeah.
one direction. With a large format camera, obviously you can. There's some. There's much more reach. You can go all the way to 40 millimeters if you want to,
Yeah.
up and down, and at the same time you can move to the left and to the right.
Yeah.
So that's a big advantage of a large format camera like I have. So that's also one of the reasons that I started shooting with large format cameras, because of the specific movements that are ideal for architecture. Uh, but there's also a downside to large format film photography, and that downside is that, of course, that I mean it's a big camera, right? You
Yeah.
have to carry it around. So I'm not using it when I'm traveling. I'm not using it when I'm doing workshop because it's just too much to handle.
Mm.
On top of that, you also have the film holders, right? I mean,
Yeah.
with the large format camera, you have just one film holder in which you can put two sheets. So
Yep.
that's just two shots. So if you already, so I usually bring 5 film holders with me. That's 10 shots. I mean,
Mm.
that's already quite a big package in my camera bag, you know.
God, yeah.
So there are all sorts of downsides to film photography, especially large format film.
Mm.
So I'm still doing it, but it's much more for fun. And when uh, and I'm doing it just here, just
Okay.
nearby. So
Yeah.
not when I'm traveling. Even though it would be great if I could do this also on my travels. But then you're dealing with the film, you're dealing with the development,
Yeah.
and uh, and the thing is with the large format camera, you have this ground plate. It's
Yeah.
really hard to see through, you know. It's really hard. I mean,
It is.
with the
Yeah, I've
medium
done it.
with the medium format film, you can just look at your viewfinder, and there it is, you know. But now you have
Yeah.
to go under this cloth, and then you still see nothing. I was about to say you still see shit, but let's cut this out, Andrew.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you know, it's very hard to compose your shot.
It is. Yeah.
But still, it's a nice way of uh, working in a very slow pace. You know,
Yeah.
it makes you think. It makes you feel much more intentional in how you set up things.
Mm.
And I believe that that really improves your photography. It's also one of the reasons that slowing down that I'm doing long exposure photography because it slows you down completely. If you
Mm.
do that with large format camera, I mean, you you move in slow motion throughout the day. You know, when I
Mm.
shoot with my digital camera, long exposure, a full day, I would come home with, let's say, maximum 15, 20 shots. That's already a lot, you know. On
Wow.
average, I would come home with 10, 12 shots with my digital camera. With my large format camera, I would come home with just 4 shots, something like that.
Yeah.
So, so it slows you down. It makes you think about what you're doing. It
Yeah.
makes you want to pick out just the right kind of shot. Okay, you're not going to leave anything to chance.
Yeah.
You're not doing that. I'm not. I never did that, by the way, with my long exposure photography on my digital camera.
Mm.
But absolutely no way that's going to happen with my large format camera, because
Mm.
every shot has to count,
Yes.
right?
God, yes. I'm used to that.
Yeah. So that's large format photography, but it's easier to do it with a digital camera, of course, much easier.
Yeah. Have you always been the same then, or do you come from the film era? Because obviously you said you've only been in photography. What was it? 12 years?
No, actually, I've been in photography for the moment that I really started picking up the camera to come up with something
Yeah.
that's intentional, that's more than just a family snapshot, was just 14 years ago. Okay,
Okay.
so and before that, I already had this film camera, but and a digital camera as well, by the way. But it's more like, okay, I'm going to travel, I'm going to take a snapshot, I'm
Yeah.
going to photograph my family, that kind of stuff. You know, I was never very serious about that, even
Yeah.
though I had artistic aspirations, but I was too lazy to come up with something that's artistic. You know,
Mm.
if I took a shot, it was necessary because I want to record that specific moment. So basically, 14 years ago, I started really picking up the camera and with the intention to come up with something artistic.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was mainly digital then, was it?
Yes, that was a digital camera. I also had a film camera, but
Yeah.
of course, digital was much easier to do that.
Yeah. So it's not like the the large formats come from just a passion of film. It's
Yeah,
become more because it's a good tool for what you need.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the large format camera was something that I came across that I wanted to try out.
Yeah.
Uh, And because I've shot with film before, but not with a large format camera, and
Yeah.
that was an entirely different experience, you know. But
God,
it was
yeah.
a very nice experience, very nice one. Yeah,
Yeah. I think it's as long as you got the time, like you say, then it's something to try. I know the first time I tried it, I found it exciting and it's confusing, but I think sometimes you need a little bit of help around you as well because it is very, very different to just starting with digital inset.
absolutely. It's I mean, if you have a digital camera, you can just shoot, let's say, 1,000 shots in a few hours, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you don't have to think about it. You just try to click as many as possible. While with
mm,
this, you have to really think about what you're doing. I mean, you don't want to spend a full year developing uh, film sheets that have nothing on it, you know.
oh God, yeah,
No, so every shot has to count. Yeah, so I think it's a great way of learning photography in all its aspects. I think, you know, that's what I really believe. I really think that maybe every digital photographer should go back to film, even if it's just for temporarily, you know,
yeah,
just to get that feeling that you have to slow down. If you
yeah,
want to create something beautiful, slow it down.
yeah,
Think about it. Just, I mean, don't just click on that thing, you know, just think
yeah,
about it first and try to be more deliberate with it. And slowing down is a good way to into achieving that, you know.
yeah. I love it. Yeah, so you was also saying that you've shot on other cameras as well, haven't you? I mean, how did that compare? Is that important to you?
No, it isn't important at all. So,
Okay.
like I said in the earlier on, I'm not sure if that's recorded on video or tape. I said that uh, I also shot with Phase One 100 megapixel cameras. So, what
Hmm.
Phase One would do is to send it to me and use it for a few months and to come up with some of my experiences, and that was a deal. They wanted me to shoot with their black and white, their achromatic cameras, and I could report on that. Uh, but it also offered me the opportunity to shoot with their cameras for a few months, and you know, uh, for me it doesn't make a lot of a difference. Of course,
Yeah,
you know, if you would, for example, zoom in, you would see that that's a there's more detail. Yeah, absolutely, it's more accurate. But
yeah,
you know, the size lenses in combination with that 100 megapixel back should result in that kind of detail. But the question is, do you really need it? You know, and if I compare it with my 50 megapixel Canon camera, I
mm.
have the DS, the 5DS. I forgot the name. You see, I'm not
It's
even
so
interested.
important.
You know, it's not important to me at all. I have the 5D
Yeah.
with the 50 megapixels, so 50. You know, it's already quite a lot. You know,
Mm.
and how it comes out of the camera in my photographs, it's already looking great. So I don't feel the need for having an even bigger and uh, more expensive camera. I'm happy with what I have, and I can express myself through that kind of technology. So I don't need anything better. Of course, you know, if I have the opportunity to to buy a bigger and faster and more megapixel camera, and I have the money for it, I would do so. Yeah, why not? But it's not going to be an obsession for me. Absolutely not.
No, that's cool because that's what you want to hear. You know, when you're talking to people like yourself, you need to know: is this an important part of my photography? Is the results
Uh,
important? You know, which elements?
of course, good equipment is always important, you know. But once you
Mm.
have it, I mean, if a Canon is a good camera. For some people, it's a Sony or a Nikon or whatever. They're good cameras, you know. So don't worry about that anymore.
Mm.
Try to focus on your artwork. Try to be obsessive about that, not so much about your gear.
Yeah,
And sometimes I'm missing that part. They're being obsessive about their gear, and they know a lot about their gear. They know the latest about the latest, and and if you ask them, okay, do you know who Alfred Stieglitz is? Okay, I'm not hinting at you, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know anyone.
But the thing is, then they don't know that. While if you're a fine art photographer, you should actually know a bit more about your history.
Yeah.
It's I think that's important.
Yeah.
That's more important. Being obsessive and more passionate about the originality, the authenticity, and also integrity with which you create your artwork.
Mm.
Okay, that's much more important.
No, you're not the only person who said that as well. So it's quite comforting to hear that people at the top of the game talk about this, about things like intent as well.
I truly believe that you cannot be at the top of your game if you're obsessive about the wrong kind of things.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, because I also know a lot of fantastic photographers, great photographers, and they have good equipment, but that's it, right?
Yeah.
They don't worry about that. They worry about completely different kind of things.
Mm.
That's how you can be at the top of your game, if you are concerned and fanatic and passionate about the right things that you need for your work.
No, that's cool. I think you've nailed, and I think it's going to help me, because I think it'll help me focus on the elements that I've always thought would improve me,
Yeah.
and none of that ever related to the technology. It was always going to be research, improving my knowledge of people and styles and genres and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I think the more people I talk to, like yourself, you all have an effect on me. So I'm always grateful for this.
I hope I have a positive effect on you, Andrew, not so much a negative one.
You definitely will. I adore your work. So what can I say? If I'm 1% as good, I'll be happy. So
Okay.
So I think we're now through the formal part of the interview, and I'd like to take you into my random questions.
Okay. So
Okay.
go ahead,
So
Andrew.
I know you have a sense of humor, so I know you're going to like some of these.
I'm human after all, Andrew.
Yeah. Sometimes I worry about people, though. You got to admit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your first one. What is scarier? Or should I say, which is scarier, clowns or spiders?
Oh, I hate spiders.
The
Yeah. When I see this little spider hanging above me, I, s- I ran a, I run away and scream like a little girl. Okay, but that's a true story, by the way. I'm not just kidding. I'm afraid of spiders. Absolutely.
Okay. So if I see some photograph by you, I know there'll be some symbolic meaning there, won't there?
Say that again.
So if I see like a picture of a spider somewhere in your photography, I
Yeah,
know there's going to be something deep in coming out in your imagery.
maybe, but I don't think I would ever shoot spiders. That would be a very rare occasion. Even though I have shot some spiders in the past, but that's because I just wanted to learn how to handle a camera. But that's long ago.
Okay. No, that's fine. No, I like that. That's interesting. Next one. So, Mercedes-Benz was named after his daughter. What would you name your car after?
Oh, that's a interesting question, Andrew.
Told you I like to
I,
be different.
I didn't know if I would name my car after someone. I mean, no, just I have no clue. I would call it Artisan Pro X, after my panel that I created, the black and white processing panel. I don't know. I think naming a car after someone who's dear and near to you, that sounds like a sort of a disrespect towards the people who are near and dear to you. You know, I mean,
Mm.
a person that you love is much more important and much more valuable than a car. You know, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but that's my personal opinion.
That's a good answer, and that fits who you are. So no, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't mind people who are naming their car after people they love, you know. I mean,
yeah,
but I wouldn't do that, you know. That's just me.
yeah, that's who you
That's
are.
me.
No, that's cool. Okay, your next one. If an orange tastes of an orange, what does a butterfly taste of?
What's that? Oh my God!
I told you to be different.
It's butterfly would taste like licorice, and you know
Oh,
that Dutch people are crazy about licorice, right? And it's something.
okay.
It's an acquired taste, as you know.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think a butterfly would also be an acquired kind of taste. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that that makes sense, Andrew. I don't know.
I don't think it has to have make sense, does it?
Yeah.
Okay, next one then. So instead of national service, you have to take part in the Olympics. So what event would you do and why?
In the Olympics.
Hmm.
Oh my God. I was always fond about. I always enjoyed the 100-meter sprints. You know, that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
yeah.
Also the 200 meters, uh, long jumps, that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't be good at it. But if I were to pick one, I would say. 200 meters, maybe. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would do that. I would love that. I would end up last, of course, but for me, it would be fun. Okay.
You'd probably still beat me. So
I don't know. I don't know.
I wasn't very good at it. But yeah, I was the same. Okay. So if each country was a drink, what would the Netherlands be?
Oh,
I'd
uh,
probably say America's probably Pepsi or Coke. I'd definitely
yeah.
say England's beer, but then would you say
I would say an orange then. Okay,
okay?
it's very obvious.
Yeah.
I was about to say something else, but I don't want to offend my country fellow men. So let's just say orange, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I have to be really careful. I don't know who's listening to this kind of podcast.
Yes, you do. Yeah, that's true. Okay. No problem. So your last one then, here we go, is there are many famous children's books and stories like Little Red Riding Hood and Jack and the Beanstalk.
Hmm.
Which would you choose to re-edit and put a different spin on it for, say, a different audience? For e.g., turn the wolf into a vampire.
So, should I pick one of those two books?
No, any children's book you really liked and maybe could think of a different spin. Because obviously each country has its own.
Yeah, no. Okay, I haven't read a children's book lately, but I guess one of those fairy tales, you know, like
Yeah,
Cinderella or
yeah,
Snow
exactly. Yeah,
White, something like that. I would take one of those books, I think, and uh, I don't know. I don't know what to do with it, but I don't know what kind of different spin I have to give it to. But I would probably take one of those fairy tales, those Disney fairy tales, because I always love those. You know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I watch them quite often with my daughters, you see, so I don't get the option.
I mean, I don't always necessarily watch it with my children, but I just like to watch it. You know. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
still a little kid inside, I guess.
yeah. I think that's the best thing in some ways.
Yeah, you have to not only look young, but you also have to stay young inside, you know. And
Mm.
most people forget about that. I think
Yes.
at some point people are going to age, and it's not so much the exterior part that's aging, but it's mostly the interior part that's aging, and that's an even worse thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
I try to stay young, to keep young inside as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same. I think it's important, and I think having younger children around me has helped me in that sense.
Yeah, it helps you, yeah, but it helped me too. But still, you know, I'm even with my friends who are the same age as I am,
Mm.
I make some stupid childish jokes, and you know, and the thing is, I like it.
Yeah.
It makes me feel silly. It makes me feel childish, and I think it's
Mm.
a good thing.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Like one of my big things is watching comedy,
Yeah.
and I've done this since probably the 80s,
Hmm.
and for me it helps me relax, and I don't know, it's just such a buzz. For me, like a comedian would be the ultimate job.
Oh, I could never do that. You know, it's
Mm.
so difficult.
Oh yeah, yeah. To do it would be tough.
Absolutely. And talking about comedy, I mean, English comedy is quite good. You know that. It's
Oh,
quite
thank you.
fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I listen to any things from all over. Um, some
Hmm.
Australians and Kiwis. I listen to all sorts.
Hmm.
I think it's all good, and I think dialects bring different humour as well, and
Yeah.
different people and cultures and everyone, because you can get away with things maybe other people can't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's
Absolutely.
all part of life. Well, I have to say, Joel, I've really enjoyed this. Um,
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. It was a nice chat, Andrew.
it's really nice because I think I'm sure the listeners will agree that there's been a lot of honesty on your half, on your side as well, and
Hmm.
um, it. I think it really resonates with people more than anything. Things like that.
The kind of work that I do, and that's something that I like to call fine art photography, then I'm more interested in different kind of things. I'm more interested in the artistic aspects of photography, and reading about art history. I like that. You know, I mean,
mm,
it broadens my horizon. It makes me see things in different kind of ways. And hopefully it also improves my photography. So basically, when I'm trying to learn something, I'm not looking at other photographers. Instead, I prefer to read a book about a specific painter. So, for example,
mm,
I've read about Picasso, about Matisse, about Lucian Freud, the British
mm-hmm,
painter, you know, or Francis Bacon. I mean, if you read those kind of books, I mean, it shows you so many things that you would never consider as a photographer that you don't see in other photographs, you know, and
mm,
that's something that other photographers will not teach you, you know. But those painters, those renowned painters, can give you so many insights that are
mm,
also important for photography, and that is something that I would always advise people to do to look beyond the let's say this genre of art, beyond the boundaries of photography, and look at other art forms.
yeah,
That is very important.
yeah. I think it's something I've sort of started realizing. So that's why I say, I always appreciate people like yourself, and I do listen to what people say, and I
Hmm.
think on a subliminal level, it goes in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So the last couple of things then, Joel. Do you want to tell all our lovely listeners where they can check out your work?
Well, you can go to my website, that is bwvision.com. So bw blackandwhitevision.com. Uh, you can find all my work in there. You can also go to my Instagram if you want to, even though I'm not so very active on social media these
Mm-hmm.
days,
Yeah.
because I'd like to focus on on the things that I'm creating. I like to focus on the articles that I'm writing.
Yeah.
I like to develop new techniques, methods for black and white processing, but also masking. So that those are more important things to me to improve my photography and improve on the techniques that are available in the world of photography.
No, thank you for and everyone really needs to check you out there because, like you say, you've got your links to your workshops. You've
Yeah,
got your galleries on there.
yeah.
You've obviously got ties with was it High Tech?
Format high tech, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
So,
some
so
good
that
bits.
so there's a lot of stuff on my website indeed.
Mm,
So you can find the links to Format High Tech because I'm one of their signature artists, meaning I have this kit with my own name on it. And by the way, Format High Tech back in 2012 when they approached me, they really listen, because thing is, you asked me in the in the preparation of this
mm,
interview, okay, why am I working with Format High Tech? Because
yeah.
they're one of the few people in the world who are really listening to photographers. So
Wow.
keep this in mind. Back in 2012, this guy from, sorry, this guy from Format High Tech, their marketing manager, approached me and they wanted to join one of my workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point we started talking and I asked him, okay, so why don't you guys develop a 16 stops ND filter?
Mm.
And before I knew it, they developed the first prototype with 60 stops ND filter. By the way, one of the first 16 stops ND filters in the world. So they developed it, and few months later, they brought it to production, and now a 16 stops ND filter has become quite the standard, right? Quite a default. Everyone
Wow.
has a 16 stops ND filter, and it started with them, with Format High Tech. So whatever you may think about them, they listen to photographers.
That's good.
And now everyone has a 16 stops ND filter in the lineup, like Nissi or Lee or whoever,
Yeah.
But Format High Tech was one of the first. So that's one of the reasons that I started collaborating with them, and because they listen to photographers.
That's good. Yeah, that's really, really good. I like that. No,
Yeah.
thank you for that, Joel. And the last thing before I leave you is I do this pay it forward scheme. Is there anyone you admire, someone's work you've seen that you think would maybe like to come on the show in the future?
I think that in that case, you should definitely contact Juliana Gospodarou, also the one with whom I wrote the book From Basics to Fine Art with.
Okay.
She did the lion's share for the book, and she is she knows a lot about art, a lot about architecture, and she is she's the one that you should definitely invite. Absolutely.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah.
So all I can say is thank you so much, Joel. It's been lovely having you.
Thank you very much. And by all means, if you're listening, next week I'm going to release my advanced masking video.
Yay!
So with some absolutely new techniques. I just want to say that. If you hope you don't mind,
No, of
Andrew.
course not. No, not a problem.
Yeah.
So will that go up on the website straight away?
That will go on the website. So what I'm going to discuss, it's a 4-hour video tutorial
Okay.
split up in parts. So I'm teaching you there in that video a completely new technique, advanced masking technique that you won't find anywhere else on the internet. And on top of that, I'm also teaching you how to combine different techniques together and to make the exact right decision per photograph. I'm not bringing you a miracle technique. What I'm going to do is to teach you what kind of decisions to make for what kind of photographs and
Yeah.
how to mask it efficiently, using also one of my newest techniques that you again cannot find anywhere else.
Wow,
So
that sounds cool.
that's just me trying to promote my work.
No, that's fine. Is that Lightroom then or Photoshop?
It's Photoshop. Yeah.
Photoshop. Okay, I see.
Yeah. Photoshop.
Right.
Okay.
No,
Thank you for having me here, Andrew. It was I really enjoyed talking to you.
oh, thank you. It's appreciated. And I will speak to you very soon, my friend.
Okay, Andrew, have a great evening and speak soon. Okay.
Thank you, Joel. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.